Very Professional Interviews is a Narcoleptic cow production. If you want to check out more of our stuff, please do so, and also check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Hi everyone, it's me, Basic Bisson, or Joshua Bisson, a new member of the Narcoleptic Cow Productions team, and I'd like to introduce this new podcast. It's called Very Professional Interviews, where I will be interviewing a diverse range of people on a diverse range of things. In this podcast, I interviewed my two dear friends, Hannah and Jacob, who are both goths, and I wanted to ask them questions about the Gothic subculture, and just subcultures in general. In this interview that I recorded near the end of April, we talked about the elitism in the Gothic subculture, and more things like the fetishization and the harassment that a lot of goths face. And we also talk about the tie-in between the LGBT community and the goth community. It's a really interesting one, and I hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, here we go! I'm doing an interview with two goths. I'm joined by Hannah Stewart, also known as Gothic Rose Beauty on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm also joined by Jacob Allison, known as A Familiar Nightmare on Instagram and Facebook. And anything else?
That's all, yeah.
That's all. We're going to be talking about goths and the goth community today, and I'm very interested to hear what your answers are to my questions. I don't know, I've got my interview voice on.
It's all good.
So we're going to, I'm going to ask you just a general question from the beginning. What makes someone a goth?
Okay, so to answer that question, I think it might be appropriate to give a bit of the history of what goth is and what it's become over the last 40 years.
Okay.
That goth has been going on for now.
Yeah. 40
years?
It's 40 years, round about over 40 years. So the Gothic subculture started in the late 70s, early 80s, and it kind of branched off from the punk scene. And it was originally a music scene, and it's kind of over the last couple of about 20, 40 years now, I think, it's kind of branched off into lots of different things that make it into a big subculture. So there's lots of different genres of music, there's lots of different fashion, there's literature, architecture comes into it as well. Movies is another thing, and other forms of art as well.
I would definitely say that goth is very similar to punk. Naturally it would be, since it's developed from punk, but I realised that we didn't actually answer what makes someone a goth. Because people have their own interpretations. We'll get a bit into that a bit later maybe. But I would say what makes someone goth, in my opinion, is someone that has an appreciation for the different aspects of the subculture that Hannah mentioned.
Are there any similarities to, say, furries? Which is a very strange comparison to make.
It is. I don't know.
Because that's not the subculture.
There might be some people. I haven't really met anyone in the Gothic subculture that's a furry, but there probably is people that are on both sides of that. Well, you could probably say there's something similar, is that it's about a community of people that have very similar interests. So there's people that like drawing animals or having fursuits. That's a big community, and it's quite nice with that. And goth is very similar, with a community that cares for people and aren't ashamed.
I would also say that you can have more than one identity, really.
Yeah, exactly.
I identify with a lot of different things. I'm not purely a goth. But so I would say that there can be crosses into different subcultures within goth as well.
Yeah, well, within any subculture, there's bound to be some people who don't get along with each other, because which is with any community. So is there any elitism in the community? You're
always going to find some form of elitism in any place. We haven't really came across a lot in the subculture. I've seen more online than I actually have seen in person. And it seems to be more and more with social media, like people telling you can't do this because you don't dress like this, or you don't listen to this, you can't be this. But I feel like the Gothic subculture should be quite more open to people being different and not everyone's going to like the same things, but it's such a broad and wide spectrum of different things in the subculture that you're going to find people that have similar interests in something or other.
Elitism is very much kind of the minority, but they're a loud minority.
Yes.
So like people can be put off by elitism, but they should know that this is just a very small percentage of a much bigger thing. And the majority of people in the subculture are very accepting, lovely people, and you know, they shouldn't be put off by the angry rants of a few people.
Yeah. The subcultures, like the Gothic subculture, is really nice. Like we find like a lot of people are really accepting since we're quite young in the subculture. A lot of older people are really thrilled that there's a lot of young blood coming in to it, because it has died out for a while and it's starting to regain popularity again. So
well, that's interesting because you're probably the only two goth people that I do actually know. You don't really see very many people who are goths these days, but when you do, they're all very lovely people. That's what my experience with goths in general. But you were talking about how like it's a very accepting community. Would you say there's any intersections with marginalised groups like LGBT people and stuff like that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
With every kind of subculture, there's always going to be people from all walks of life and all different religions, races, sexualities, and genders as well. As
with any subculture, you get a diversity within that, for sure. And I know that definitely people within LGBT communities are kind of drawn to goth, especially trans people and gay people, or just anyone that wants to experiment with makeup and dress sense and stuff like that. We also know a few cross-dressers within the community that go to the clubs and things like that. As a whole, I would say that goth is just very welcoming to that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because I feel like a lot of the time it's very freeing for trans people and people who need almost a way to express themselves in a time when they can't.
With the goth subculture and the community, it's quite androgynous with the style and fashion.
Exactly.
So you'll see men wearing big skirts and you'll see women wearing kind of more masculine clothes, and there's a good mix of people kind of dressing how they want to, and it's quite nice to see people express themselves in their own way.
Yeah, that is awesome. And do you have any grievances with the community anyway?
I just feel like online harassment from certain people online, I feel like I've never received anything, and I don't have you, Jacob? No, not really.
Not in person, but we did receive comments online before. If you remember that.
We have received comments saying we're not goth or we're not goth enough.
That's right. That's the elitism we were talking about.
Yes. I've seen like people make videos like bashing people that are just getting into the subculture. There's a term for them called baby bats, which can be an endearing thing, but can also be quite.
I'd love to be called a bat. Actually, maybe not.
I don't know. But to certain people, some see it as a derogative term for someone that's trying too hard. But I feel like when you have such young, impressionable people coming into subculture, you should like be really happy and let them experiment and let them find their own way into the place.
Do you think this is a bit of a deep question? But do you think a lot of the backlash, a lot of those types of people who are angry and at new people entering the subculture are angry because they weren't accepted for being goth before that?
I don't know. I think it might be a generation thing as well, because it's mainly like people that like the trad goths, which are traditional goth from 80s, and there's a lot of people that are into that style still. I'm still quite into that style of 80s fashion. Yeah, and it's kind of between the more modern kind of goth scene with younger people wearing it's called new goth. So there's kind of a divide.
And pastel goth as well.
And pastel goth, so there's kind of a divide where people are like, that can't be goth, or you can't do this. But
that's interesting. So is pastel goth, but more of a sort of bright colours and stuff?
It kind of started off, I believe, as a kind of fashion in Harajuku, Japan.
Ooh.
So it's kind of one of these kind of street fashions. It's kind of got really big online on, I think, Tumblr and Instagram. It's more of the fashion rather than the music, or I don't think there's really any pastel goth kind of stuff
No,
really.
no music
It's more
goth,
pastel goth is more into like kind of kawaii kind of culture.
Yeah.
So it's kind of more like a kawaii kind of cute gothic style.
I wonder if you could count. This is kind of offside. I'll maybe cut this out.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you could count Poppy as a pastel goth sort of thing.
I don't know.
Because it's kind of cutesy, but also definitely referencing a lot of sort of.
I could see her maybe as creepy cute, which is another kind of fashion.
Ooh.
Which is more kind of like wearing cute Lolita dresses but covered in gore.
Oh my god.
Yes. There's a lot of different. So I feel like that's more of pastel goth is more of a fashion side to the subculture. A lot of people don't accept it, but I think we should just let people express themselves in that. And there's all different things in the subculture. Not everyone's going to like the same things, and it's always evolving, so there's always going to be new things added and change.
We attend the Whitby Goth weekend sometimes, and a thing that happens there a lot is there's a bit of a divide between two groups of people. The people who dress in Gothic clothing, and then there are people, mainly the locals, who dress in Halloween costumes and things like that.
Right.
In my opinion, and this is an unpopular opinion amongst the kind of elitists, I'm completely fine with them dressing up that way because they're participating in the event, and the fact that they actually participate shows that they're accepting of our culture, and I think that's just great, and I think that should not be discouraged exactly, because I feel like, especially where we come from in Scotland, goth isn't accepted as much.
Yes.
But there's a bigger community down in England.
Yeah.
And
it's even
it just
bigger
kind of gives,
in Europe as well, so
it gives me the perspective.
Dying out a bit.
It gives me the perspective that you really shouldn't discourage people who are already accepting of the culture.
Well, I think that's also, like, you could say that it's a lot better than the outright hostility that a lot of people are giving it. And it's nicer to have people who are supporting it, even if they don't even consider themselves goth.
Yeah.
Than like people kind of shying away from it.
It's nice to see people get involved, because you do get a lot of like harassment on the streets for the way you dress, and then seeing other people take interest and ask questions about the Gothic subculture and get involved is really nice. There's kind of a bit of a divide with the way the newspapers portray the Whitby Goth weekend.
Just coming to that actually,
it's usually seen very positively on by the news and media, but a lot of the time, like, the photos that are used are people dressed in costumes. Not all the time, but and a lot of people say, "Oh, these aren't the real goths. How dare you?" But the thing is, a lot of people that could consider themselves being the real goths of the festival don't actually go out and get their photos taken. They kind of shy away and wait until night falls to go to the bands. Because we know a couple of people that just stay away from the cameras, and we know a lot of people that just go there to get dressed up.
I find it funny that they then complain about the representation of the goth community at Whitby Goth weekend when they're not actually representing it, because they're not going out there to get their photos taken.
Exactly.
So it's kind of funny that way.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons when you were talking earlier about have we experienced that. That was one of the reasons that we have, because we're not shying away from cameras.
We do dress a bit more theatrical when we go down there, because we finally get the chance to dress in all our really lovely clothes that we've accumulated over the years.
It's nice to show it off.
It's nice to show it off and to show your hard work of like, oh, I made this or did this kind of thing. But some people think like, oh, it's just a costume. You don't actually do this all the time.
I think, we kind of have already touched on this, but how do you feel the way the media portrays goth? And I also would like to say, how do you feel the religious media portrays goths? Because there's a lot of controversy around that, isn't there?
You kind of know a bit more of that.
Well, I was brought up in a Christian family. Right. I wouldn't say that my family so much had a problem of me being goth. To be honest, they were more concerned when I went through my own emo phase.
Right.
By the way, just want to clarify that nothing wrong with emos. I'm not a fan of the music. And like the whole thing about self-harm.
Yeah.
Not true. Not true. That is not part of the subculture. That is a mental health issue, completely separate from anything to do with. Well, I wouldn't say emo is a subculture, but anything to do with the lifestyle or whatever you want to call it.
It's almost like when they blame they blame video games on violence.
Exactly.
Yeah. They also blamed like Marilyn Manson, who isn't goth, but a lot of people in the subculture do like him. A lot of people don't at the same time, but they blamed him for the Columbine shootings as well.
Yeah, I heard about
and
that. Yeah.
They weren't really. They were saying, "Oh, these goths shot everyone," and it wasn't goths. It was just two guys that were black.
Yeah.
But as for the way the media portrays goths, media is quite a wide thing. Like you could count social media in with that.
Yeah.
This is something that I wanted to bring up, and I was trying to find a way to bring it in.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Right.
There was a social media poll on Scottish Twitter. Yeah,
oh,
Scottish Twitter.
I love
which is
Scottish
funny.
Twitter.
I love Scottish Twitter. But there was a social media poll, very infamous now. What do you prefer, fajitas or goths? And there was an outstanding vote in favour for fajitas, obviously.
Okay.
But people are like, ah ha ha, Scotland hates goths, we love fajitas. It's like, I would choose fajitas over most people.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? Fajitas are delicious.
Love fajitas,
people not so much.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because I think you can frame that in two ways. It's either people hate goths or people love fajitas.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
And I love fajitas.
I love fajitas.
I would choose fajitas over goths as well.
I would choose goths.
honestly.
I don't know. I think I'd choose goths because I
you
had a
can't
great
hate
interview with
goths.
you two, and I think because we're kind of running a bit over time. I'm going to ask the final question now, if that's okay.
Okay.
Would with your experience in this is more not about being goth, but about your experience in photography and modelling.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sort of intersect with you guys being goth? Do you get a lot of people wanting to do goth stuff with you, or do you get people wanting to do a variety of things?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I can see Hannah really wants to say something, so let her.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a lot of photographers approach us and want to take photos of us with our costumes and our fashion and style, but we have met a lot of photographers that don't really know what goth is, and they when we come to the photo shoot they expect us to be kind of half naked and bondage gear or something.
Yeah.
So
there's a clear fetishization of the subculture, which I'm completely against.
there is a sub fashion in the culture called fetish goth, but it's not that's not our kind of style.
But
So-
it does kind of come off as quite sexist as well.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
expecting women to dress in that way.
When we've spoke to photographers and they've talked about like, oh, what kind of looks they do and stuff, they kind of don't, either they have a good grasp on the subculture, but that's usually people we know who are in the subculture that are photographers, and then some photographers don't know exactly what it is and they just kind of think, so you wear really skimpy outfits and
It ties
dress in
into-
black?
It ties into public perception as well, because public perception generally is one thing of goth, and that's kind of the current perception of goth right now is new goth. So it's just one fashion, and they think that the music is heavy metal and lots of screaming and stuff like that, and there's lots of different kinds of goth music, and screaming doesn't actually really come into that many of them, to be quite honest.
I think it comes more from like people getting emo and goth confused.
And also metalheads and black metal and stuff like that.
And there's a lot of people in the subculture who do like black metal and metal
I know
and
I do.
stuff. I do as well. But yeah, there's a lot of crossovers where people kind of get things confused.
Yeah.
And the way it's portrayed in films is usually quite negative.
Yes.
Or just uses a joke or a throwaway gag.
I found that most films featuring a goth are comedies.
Yes.
And they either hypersexualize the character or play off of stereotypes and cliches.
Yes.
And very little of the time do they actually represent what goth actually is.
Well, that's
And I
the
understand that in the context of a comedy, but at the same time...
One of the things that I think a lot of people will first think of when they think of goth is going to be Richmond from the IT crowd.
I like Richmond.
I like
Quite
Richmond.
honest.
Richmond's quite accurate to Jacob. You look quite like Richmond.
I'll take that as a
I
compliment.
think that's a good place to
And you
end
do
it.
listen to Cradle of Filth a lot.
I love Cradle of Filth.
Anyway, would you like to promote any of your stuff before we end?
No.
Okay, great.
You already covered my social media at the
Yeah,
beginning.
Yeah,
so
you
I'm
covered
fine.
mine as well,
Yeah, thank
like-
you, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll hire them both to do makeup and modeling.
Thank
It'd
you.
probably just be Joe who's listening to this. But anyway, thank you for listening, and Okay, that was episode 1, a little conversation with me, Hannah and Jacob. A really good one as well, and I hope to have them on again maybe at some point. Maybe just to discuss other things, more about their modelling and photography career. A little mention of Jo at the end, because this podcast was originally just supposed to be used for her graded unit, but I thought it was so interesting that I should use it for this interview show, and I think it turned out pretty well. Okay, that pretty much does it. If you want to find us, you can find Narcoleptic Cow on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, as I said at the beginning. But you can also find me at Basic Bisson on Twitter. That's that. Goodbye!